Okay, calm down.
Wanted to ask you guys about AMLO's and Sheinbaum's position on Palestine.
The official position is calling for an immediate ceasefire and a peaceful resolution to the conflict. I would argue that that's not a good enough position. The movement on the streets in Mexico, I've accompanied many of the marches, has been really clear: break relations with Israel, the way that other countries in Latin America have done. But I think when it comes to the issue of Palestinian liberation struggle, this has been probably the best government in recent years when it comes to that. So Mexico, under López Obrador, recognized the state of Palestine, which is something that hadn't happened before. It was one of the few countries in Latin America that hadn't done it. It took the case to the International Criminal Court around the issue of the ongoing genocide, and actually very recently signed on to, as a part of the parties interested in the discussion at the International Court of Justice that was presented by South Africa against Israel. So I think in many ways it's been very positive, and I don't think that any of the opposition parties would have taken a position like that. I think they should go further. They should break relations with Israel, and it would come at a very high price. There's a couple of people who have fled to Israel and are hiding and are wanted by the Mexican justice system. And I would suspect that's part of the reason why Israel has been actually clear about saying that the reason they haven't handed over some of these figures is because of López Obrador's position on Palestine. But in the case of Sheinbaum, there's been a lot of speculation because she's a Jewish woman. And that's been really disappointing, because the people saying, she's Jewish, she's a Zionist, she meets with the Zionist lobby and things like that. Certainly she did have meetings with people from Israel as part of her public duties. But can we say that this is a fair representation? Well, I'm not sure, but there's actually a publication that she came out. She wrote a piece many years ago at this point. I believe it was 12 years ago. But she said specifically on the previous instance of Israel attacking Gaza, said that because I'm my Jewish origin, because of my love for Mexico, because I feel like I'm a citizen of the world, because I share this desire of millions of people for justice, equality, fraternity, and peace, I can only see these horrific images of bombing by the Israeli state in Gaza, and nothing can justify the killing of Palestinian civilians, right? So the times that she has taken a public position has been quite good. And I think it's going to be important. There's been a lot of mobilizations here in Mexico to continue to put that pressure on, to continue to demand that they push to whatever place that Mexico has in the international community for an immediate ceasefire in order to end the horrors that are happening in Gaza.
Something that endears her to me is the attack she's been getting from people like Democratic Majority for Israel, which is kind of like an AIPAC group. But let's take a look. This was hilarious. So let's take a look at this tweet from Claudia. She writes, gracias a Jesús, mi esposo, por acompañarme, which means literally, thank you, Jesus, my husband, for accompanying me. You don't have to know that much Spanish to understand that, or you can just do a translate. And let's see how someone from Democratic Majority for Israel responded to this.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Important to note that she is not involved in the Jewish community, and thank Jesus for her victory. So you didn't understand that she was thanking her husband for her victory, not Jesus Christ. And there's been a lot of criticism of her as being a bad Jew.
She doesnn't really belong to our community and things like that.
She's not part of the community. She's an atheist.
There were anti-Semitic attacks against her by none other than Vicente Fox, the former president, had to delete tweets after criticism because he made anti-Semitic attacks against Claudia, saying that the only Mexican candidate was Xochitl Gálvez. I mean, that's extraordinary.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah, and there was a lot of dog whistles at the end of the campaign of saying that, she was misusing Catholic imagery because she had the Virgen of Guadalupe in one of her outfits and things like that, and she's not a Catholic, and so why is she using it? And then quite literally the very last thing that Xochitl Gálvez put up on social media before the campaign period officially closed, the Veda Electoral, she's like, oh, I'm praying because God is on my side. It was definitely kind of like a wink, wink, vote for the Catholic woman. But it's been interesting also the reaction to that, because, I always say if this was a right-wing woman running in some European country and she was elected to a heavily Catholic country, despite coming from a religious ethnic minority, that would be celebrated. But because she comes from a progressive leftist party, it's used something to attack her. And it's really unfortunate. I think it's extraordinary. I mean, where other place in the world can you see somebody who comes from a very tiny minority being elected to the highest office? And not only that, but also being the first woman at the same time. I think that, I'm not one for, just symbolic victories, but I do think that that's something that's worth highlighting.
But that's very representative of the things that she will be dealing in a country like the one we live in. Like a lot of attention to things that wouldn't be that important in case she would be a man. That is terrible, but that is true. And a lot of like I may say attacks that wouldn't be done to a man, and they are done to that to her just because of that. Like and also a lot of conversation that we should be having about the way we understand democracy.
So this is from someone who's running for office in Arizona. Her name is Alma Hernandez. And so she wrote, to all J Twitter, Jewish Twitter, please stop with the excitement to elect the first woman Jewish president of Mexico. Sheinbaum is of Jewish descent, but doesn't participate in the Jewish community or have its backing. She says she is an atheist, never denounced October 7th, and refused to condemn Hamas and speak out about the Mexican nationals held hostage. She is no friend of Israel. So y'all can calm down. She is unaffiliated with the community and does not want to be associated. Please do your research. Okay, this is a woman, by the way, who hasn't been Jewish. She hasn't even had a decade of being Jewish under her belt. She converted. She apparently has a maternal grandfather who's Jewish, which is fine. I'm not going to judge people who convert, but she is newer to the faith. Like, for me, I don't care if you're religious. To me, you're Jewish if you have Jewish like ancestry. That's my definition. Clearly, this woman doesn't think that that's sufficient, right? But it is true that she wasn't Jewish if you're going to be religious, and I don't accept this definition. But by that woman's definition, wasn't Jewish, despite her maternal grandfather, because you have to have your mother to be Jewish. So if her mother wasn't Jewish, her mother wasn't Jewish because her mom wasn't Jewish. Anyway, this doesn't matter. Obviously, I'm just pointing out the hypocrisy, and it's kind of rich to see someone who's been Jewish for like 5 minutes come out and define what it means to be a real Jew.
And also, like, Claudia's grandparents fled Nazi persecution, right? The reason she finds herself in Mexico was because her ancestors had to flee persecution. And, the truth is, she said it previously, right? She's not an active participant of the religious part of Judaism, but she's very much kind of kept with the traditions and many of the sort of normal activities of the Jewish community growing up. She grew up in a sense a red diaper baby, right, from parents who were Jewish communists, right, and who educated her in these values. And I think a lot of it is also reflected in some of her own views. I think it's really unfortunate, right? We saw a lot of press saying, "Oh, she's AMLO's handpicked successor," which was not even true, right? Like the party had a process. In fact, the process almost split the party because one of the second place candidate was unhappy and he almost left, but he didn't. But there was a decision made. There was a process for it. But it's this attempt to kind of make it seem like she's not worthy of her own merit, but she clearly is. I mean, she comes from the grassroots. She was a student activist. She was very much involved with that. She was, she cut her teeth in politics working with López Obrador when he was mayor of Mexico City. So, I mean, she has a lot of credentials on her own. And I think, these kinds of attacks, it's all an attempt to try to weaken her and try to undermine her legitimacy as now that she's becoming president.